Welcome to Leadership Rules, where we believe leadership isn't just a role, it's a way of life. Whether you're leading a team, a community, or simply leading yourself, we're here to help you unlock the rules to lead your life with purpose and impact. I'm Nick Coniglio, and I'm joined by my co-host, Marnie Stockman. Together, we co-authored Lead It Like Lasso, and we're thrilled today to welcome Melissa Kwan.
Yeah, Melissa, we're so excited to have you. So a little bit about Melissa, co-founder and CEO of eWebinar, an automated webinar solution. So Melissa has built 3 successful companies without venture capital and has a background in sales and business development. Her philosophy is that happiness should be the foundation of one's career. I love that. And she advocates for designing a life that reflects this, and founded eWebinar to help others avoid the repetitive task of giving the same webinars repeatedly and allowing them to focus on other priorities. So, Melissa, what else did we get? What else needs to go with that intro?
I mean, it's a pretty good intro. I would just add like a fun fact that I am, I guess, kind of a cheating digital nomad because I have a home base in Amsterdam, but I do travel 11 months of the year.
Oh gosh, 11 months of the year. Wow, that's impressive. Do you have a favorite place then? Is it Amsterdam? Is that why you call that a home base?
I mean, Amsterdam is definitely my favorite place to live, but also, love winters in Thailand. And I mean, I love spending time in Asia, especially in the winter. Trying out Mexico City right now. But yeah, don't really have like a favorite place outside of home.
I would say that's not cheating, digital nomad. I think that's pretty hardcore. I'm at least for homebodies like myself and Marnie, for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. So that was a fun fact. And we like to start off with what we call our biscuits with the boss, throw to Ted Lasso and ask some quick icebreaker questions. So I'll start. First concert, best concert.
Oh, my first concert was Justin Timberlake.
Oh,
like many years ago in Vancouver. Yeah, I don't remember a best concert, but actually I go to a lot of like festivals, so like house music and things like that. Not so much concert based, but going to festivals and that kind of stuff is like a big part of my life.
Nice. Okay, easier one. Coffee or tea?
Coffee for sure.
All that traveling, gotta recover from jet lag somehow. I'd be curious if this one has an answer. Dog or cat?
Oh, I mean, I love dogs, but cats are so much cleaner.
Yeah.
So I think if I were to have a pet, it would be a cat, but dogs are very cute.
True.
And I think I know the answer to this one since we follow you on LinkedIn, but founding bootstrap versus venture capital.
Definitely bootstrap.
Yeah. And last, leadership, more art or science?
Oh, interesting. More art or science? I think it's an art. What do you think?
So first, there's a nature nurture conversation that goes around that, and it would say like 30% nature, 70% nurture. And while I think you can learn all the skills, I think that when you see a masterful leader, that there's art behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are not like cookie cutter, right? I mean, I wish it was a science, but it's probably more of an art, more of an art of managing personalities.
Yeah, I think the stats would back us up on that. So we introduced you briefly in the bio, and I've been following you for quite some time now on LinkedIn. I don't know how that happened, but it is for the betterment of me because you have some pretty interesting content out there. And we've seen you describe yourself as a 3 times bootstrapper with 1 exit. And Marnie and I were fellow startup founders ourselves. We started and sold a software company, so we appreciate that. But we've heard you mention a couple of times, trying multiple different go-to-market strategies that didn't necessarily work. You included one story about, it costing you over $100,000. We're curious the lessons that you learned from those experiences, specifically around adaptability, resilience and experimentation, those types of things. Are you willing to share any of those things with us?
Yeah, I mean, adaptability, experimentation is like basically your entire startup journey,
Yeah.
right? I think that there is such a fine line between like confidence and like complete delusion. And being a founder, you just have to be really aware is like, did I not try hard enough and long enough, or is this something that it just isn't going to work? Right. And that is every single marketing channel and strategy that we try. Like I'm quite resolved that like 9 out of 10 things that I try is not going to work, but you have to do the 10 things in order to find the one that does work. And I think, the media, and maybe even like playbooks and stuff like makes you feel like, okay, well, you have to try stuff and get to this hockey stick growth. But I really think that's a myth, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of things that you do will move the needle a little bit. And thinking that there's one thing that like shoots you up into this hockey stick growth makes it feel like, or makes it seem like there is like a finish line, like an end goal to
Just
your
find that
marketing and
one
sales, which is
thing,
just,
and then you
yeah,
should be
which is
good.
not true. Right. And I think that like we read about those things in like high growth startups, but it's so rare. Like I almost don't know any companies within like my realm of founders that have actually experienced that. And a lot of times it's just like slow and steady growth. And it's just from doing a lot of things that like kind of work, right? And the thing about marketing is like something that doesn't work today could just be too early for you, but the thing is like if you haven't tried it, then you don't know if it's going to work or not. So the strategy that you're referring to was like partnerships and affiliates, which we spent $130,000 on within like an 11-month period. And that was really painful because it wasn't just the money, right? It was like a lot of emotions involved, spent a lot of time kind of recruiting this person to manage this thing. But in the end, like we just realized like that strategy was way too early for us because we weren't ready to scale. Like we don't have a trusted brand. We don't have we don't have our product messaging down. People weren't getting the product right away. It was really difficult to sell, right? But everybody at the time was saying, well, you should try this strategy because it works really well for me.
Yeah.
And of course, like as a founder where you're trying to do things at work and try to be profitable, you're just going to try something, right? And that seemed like, a good strategy to try at the time. But I think that's a perfect example where I should have had less confidence. And, in hindsight, should have been less delusional and, cut that strategy off, sooner. But at the same time, like this is kind of how you learn. Right. And you talk about science versus art. It's like, yeah, I wish I could just cut off that strategy right now. But, a lot of times like people and emotions are involved and you just can't rip something out, even if your gut says, this is not really going to work. But, if somebody had just quit their job to join you, you can't just change your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned something in there. You said the word trusted brand, right? You weren't a trusted brand yet. So would love to get your perspective on the importance of building that personal brand. You have built quite a following. You have your LinkedIn newsletter, your founder next door. And so that clearly is well branded for you. How has that impacted where you are today? And how has that had an impact on eWebinar?
Yeah, I mean, my personal newsletter is new, and it's on Substack. It's just melissakwan.com, and I've been doing this for like a little bit over 6 months now, and then my personal branding stuff on LinkedIn has happened for the last couple of years. I do podcast marketing as well, like which is why I'm here, I guess.
Yeah.
But I also have my own podcast, directed for bootstrap entrepreneurs and executives, called Profit Led. So it's like a multifaceted kind of strategy on like personal branding and building trust. I don't know how to market any other way, right? We also invest in SEO. We've scaled back on that because AI has kind of changed the landscape of search, and we're still don't know where it's going to land.
Yeah.
But I got this company off the ground just by founder-led sales, which is required for most companies. But after 9 months, I ran out of leads, right? So like kind of my first, second, and third level referrals. And somebody was like, oh, you should look at LinkedIn. And this was a couple of years ago. So that was when I started this kind of one-to-many strategy and just followed some playbooks there. And how it's impacted the business, I guess I wouldn't know otherwise because that's a path that I took. But once in a while, like, I'll get, like, you never know who's reading or who's watching, but once in a while
That
I'll
is so
get,
true.
yeah, I get messages that are like, hey, I'm ready to look at a product like yours. I don't know you, but I feel like I do. And I'm not going to look at anyone else because I feel like, I feel like I know you. Like, I feel like you're my friend. And that's really encouraging. But the crazy thing is, like, we are a $99 product, right? So when some of these messages come in, they're like, yeah, I've been following you for 2 years and I'm ready to sign up for a trial. So, like, is the effort, worth it? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you're doing 10 of these things and everything kind of moves the needle a little bit. And I do
Yeah.
know that, like, nowadays people really care about who's behind the product just as much as the product itself. And I think that we've already gone there for consumer products and restaurants and farm to table and all that stuff a few years ago. And we've only started to see that trend in software in the last few years. So I kind of equate it to that. And as a small bootstrap company, like, you don't have money to buy ads, and you don't have VCs like advocating for you, and you're not on TechCrunch, so nobody really knows who you are. And the best thing you can do is to create a brand that is personable and trustworthy, just by, I guess, nature of, like, accessibility, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody finds me or my company just through Google, maybe they'll search the founder or they'll type it into LinkedIn, like, as I would when I'm researching other products. And then maybe they'll see, oh, I have following, and I post regularly. So um, I think it's just overall built a lot of trust for the company, such that it enables people to at least give the product a try.
Yeah.
And I think, you talk about trust, and one of the things that I really appreciate about your posting, specifically on LinkedIn, is that you show a lot of vulnerability. And I think that almost always leads to trust. And, there are other people that post all the time who just post about their successes or the fact that they're an expert in a specific domain. But that's not you. And you talk about people getting to know you, your brand, building that trust. Um, would you say that is a correct assessment? And what kind of has anybody else commented on that? Any type of feedback around that vulnerability at all?
I mean, that's the brand that I'm trying to create, right? Which is why my newsletter is called Your Founder Next Door. Like,
Yeah.
because when I was like, okay, how do I stand out in the sea of experts, right? It's intimidating, right? Because I'm not venture funded. I haven't had a big sale. I'm not on, like, any of, like, Forbes or TechCrunch, whatever. Like, that really gives me, in theory, real credibility. But I think what I can offer is to be the most relatable founder
Hmm.
out there. And that's where, like, Your Founder Next Door came from. Um, but I think that's what people want. Like, they don't need more success stories. There's so many success stories that are out there. I think what people want to hear is that they're on the right path because someone else is on a similar path, right? Or has
Yeah.
experienced something similar. Right. I can talk about my successes all the time, but, like, it's just not that interesting because it's
Yeah.
not bigger than someone else. Right. But what I can talk about are the things that I've tried, the things that have worked and haven't, and, some of my trials and tribulations, not just in my work life, but also in my personal life, which is why I talk a lot about, like, the importance of building a lifestyle business versus venture funded, and what that means, and why I put happiness in front of revenue, because I think that's the kind of stuff that people need to hear
Yeah.
in order to deprogram the idea of success that they read about,
Definitely.
somewhere, and be chasing a dream that in theory isn't really theirs.
So when we wrote Lead It Like Lasso, people will tell us. So, you always hope for, like, big review dreams of, like, this best book I've ever read, right? And our reviews came back. It's like, this is so relatable. And we've come to really appreciate that because we recognize the other books out there were either very theoretical and academic, or like the Richard Bransons and Oprah Winfrey's of the world, where that success doesn't seem like Your Founder Next Door. That success seems like, I'm not sure that's me. So I think we can really appreciate that relatability bit. So I was a teacher, and I've seen you say in life you can be a student or a teacher. So would love to hear you talk about a bit more of that.
Yeah, so actually that's a quote that like many years ago in my 20s, my hypnotherapist actually, he's like very spiritual, and he said that to me, and it's like one of those things that stuck. The story goes, I was always like a really good kid growing up, like top of class. I always studied, and like that was kind of required, for me by my family. And I felt like, in hindsight, they gave me a lot of positive reinforcement for not really achieving anything in life. Right? I'm talking about like kind of my teenage years. So I really grew up thinking I was amazing. And my dad, would say, "Oh, you can do anything you put your mind to," but I don't really believe that. You can't really do anything you put your mind to, right? Like you have to, like, everyone has a certain set of skills or capability, and I think it's really important for your ambition to match those, and not for your ambition to like supersede that, right? So I guess like in my first job, which I didn't get until I was like 21, until I graduated. I was a very, very late bloomer because my parents didn't want me to be distracted by my studies. So I just went into that job like thinking I knew everything. And I was a receptionist to a luxury building. Like I was selling real estate. So I was like the receptionist to a luxury building in Vancouver where I was living at the time. And my boss was like an incredible salesperson. She was so elegant and she spoke 6 languages. Uh, but for some reason, I just thought I was always smarter than her. So I remember one day, um, she was teaching me something, and I was like, well, isn't it better to do it this other way? And she's like, Melissa, you don't know everything. And at that moment, that really hit me because, first of all, I was embarrassed because there was like
Sure.
someone that finally professionally I respected so much. Like I wanted to be this person growing up. Like I idolized her because she was so smart and the way she carried out herself. And like she could literally sell anything. But here I am with no experience challenging someone that I respected so much. And I think in that moment, I felt like I was kind of caught red handed. And I realized that instead of trying to constantly think I'm amazing and I'm going to teach everybody around me, I should just stop talking and be a student. And that really changed the way that I approach life. I started listening instead of speaking and learning instead of teaching. And I think a lot of opportunities in my life has come to me because I changed my attitude.
I think I was a
Love
lot
that.
older than 21 when I figured that out. So I appreciate that a lot.
So, switching gears a lot, or switching gears for the moment. So, our listeners know that we talk a lot about the importance of core values, and there's probably not an episode that that doesn't go by where we don't say something to the effect of "how you do anything is how you do everything." Um, and we believe that to our core, right? How
Yeah.
I go out and play a game of golf. There are some principles in that to the same principles that we use to write our book, how I've approached my career life. Um, so we ask everybody this that we talk to: are there ways in which you incorporate your personal values with how you run your business, how your leadership of eWebinar and other initiatives that you take on? Can you talk a little bit, if there are some ways, about what that might look like?
I mean, how you do anything is how you do everything is like one of the things I live by. It's like
Yeah.
one of the things that I say a lot as well. Um, I mean, one of the core values that I have in my life and in my company um, that I really try to live by and execute every day and lead by example is integrity. Right. So integrity is not just how you treat your co-founder and your team and your customers, right? Integrity is the love that you put into your product, right? It's going the extra mile, right? Because it's the right thing to do, right? It's doing the right thing when no one's watching. And I believe that you will, like, your team will only ever be as good as you are. And that includes your co-founder, especially if you're a CEO. And it's so easy to be like, oh, let's just not do that because it's hard, because we have to rip this entire thing to go the extra 2%. But if you don't go the extra 2%, someone's going to ask for it in the future. You're going to have to do that anyway, or your product's going to be subpar, right? And so as a small company, we don't have any other currency outside of integrity. And integrity is your customers knowing that if they invest in you, that you're going to take care of them if something goes wrong. All right. And that if they invest in you as a startup with no track record, that you're going to take care of them. Like in my last startup, because it was an enterprise startup, I had customers, like we were selling to brokerages in New York, like real estate brokerages in New York. I had customers say, I know I'm going to be your first few customers, but like, just know that if this doesn't work out, or if your company shuts down, I'm in big trouble because I'm going to integrate this in my company. So you need to know that if I take a chance in you, you have to take care of me. And I guess that's kind of when I understood that, oh, it's not really just about making a sale, right? It's really about showing up. And also, it doesn't mean that, like, integrity also doesn't mean you have to do the right thing all the time and you can't screw up, right? I think it means you try to do the right thing, but if you screw up, you take accountability for it.
Yeah.
Right? You don't point fingers. You just say, hey, you know what? I screwed up. How can I make this better? Or like, let me pull an all-nighter and fix this thing. Right? It's owning it, right? It's owning and taking that responsibility. And that's something that I really do in my everyday life. And it's also goes down to the really small things. Like, I am never late, ever. But if I am even 5 minutes, I will be texting someone half an hour before, 20 minutes before. When I know I'm going to be late, they're going to know that I'm not going to be there on time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the things, like, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
And, last year, 2024, like, my core team, including myself, took a bit of a break just because we were so burnt out. And, we're maintaining our product and maintaining our customers, but we weren't running as fast as we should have been or could have been because we were just tired. And at the end of last year, like, I told my co-founder that we need to introduce discipline back into our lives. And, because, it's like running a startup is like going to the gym, right? It's so easy to stop going and then you kind of get complacent and lazy.
Yeah.
And it's hard to kind of like work up that discipline and consistency muscle again. But at the end of last year, I realized, like, what we were missing because we took some months off is that we were missing discipline.
So did you swing from because we've definitely done the 85 hours a week bit, and then you swing to like, nope, can't do that, and then lose that momentum?
Yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't really just that. It was just like the mind share of like constantly trying to make this product better and trying to get more customers and whatnot, right? It's just allowing ourselves to breathe a little. Like, it's not about the number of hours we work, right? It's like, I don't really believe in like working more equals productivity.
Yeah.
But I do believe that, like, we don't have to work more. We have to work more creatively. And sometimes you just like, if we're building a long-term company, like, sometimes you just need to take a break.
And did you find when you came back from that break, did you find that new perspective? I mean, because that's what often happens, right? I mean, you're so in the weeds, going full bore, 100% of the time, that you lose track of the big picture. I would imagine you saw that a little bit when you kind of took that break a little bit.
I'm still trying to get back into it.
Okay.
That's how hard it is to get back into it. I think the biggest shock after like taking a bit of a break is how much the world has shifted because of AI. Right. So to give you an example, like, we have always invested a lot in SEO and creating content, but all of that shifted, like, I would say started to really shift like mid last year. So people asking ChatGPT for answers, not clicking on links, right? Like, we were sometimes appearing on the first page, sometimes appearing on the third page. So you kind of know that, like, maybe these search platforms are changing their algorithm and they're not sure where they're going to land. They
haven't figured it out yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, it actually, coming back to it, like, we feel a bit lost because the world has kind of shifted and we're not sure what are the things that are going to work for this year, because we are not going to be able to do the things we did in the last couple of years this year in order to have the same result, right? If you're talking about LinkedIn, like the algorithms change. I used to get thousands of reactions per post. Now I'd be lucky if I get 100. So I'm spending a lot less time on that and a lot more time building my Substack newsletter, because then I get a direct channel to people who actually care about my content versus 1 to 2% of people that like might see it. So a lot of shift has happened since like we took a back seat. And now we're just kind of frantically figuring out like, what does 2025 look like?
It is interesting how you mention on LinkedIn that people will come to you and feel like they know you when you had no idea they were even watching. I find that so interesting when, you know, you get 6 comments on a post and then someone will say like, oh, I've been seeing you've done all of these things. Well, I haven't seen you. Why haven't you could at least give a like, so I knew you were there.
Yeah.
Super interesting. Yeah. So you've talked about building a long-term business and also having it as a lifestyle. So I suspect you already kind of have thought about your legacy. But how does that drive your short-term actions? And I think some of it is what you just said, taking a break. But what other thoughts do you have around the notion of legacy?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about legacy actually in one of my recent newsletters. I mean, my legacy is definitely not going to be building a software company. Like, not that interesting. A big part of my life is actually community building. So when I say we have a lifestyle business, it's really like my work is really something that powers my life. And in my life, I run a community with a friend of mine that we just started like a little over a year ago. We bring together people that are connected through their love of music and traveling and meaningful connections, and we bring people together multiple times a year. So for example, like we brought 150 people to a festival in Thailand in December. Like these are the things that give me joy, right? And it's not just about having fun, right? Through those initiatives, I also had initiatives like we brought 3 DJs from a township in Cape Town to join us for that festival, did a crowdfunding campaign for that, and really to be able to show people that are less fortunate an experience that they wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah.
I would love for my legacy, whatever I do next, to be community related. And everything that I do with my community now is like a bit of a test. So I don't know what that is, right? So is that a new way of living? Is that a new philosophy? When I lived in New York some years ago, I was part of 3 founders that started a co-living house. So I have some experience with like co-living and things like that. And people my age right now are also thinking like, what's the next phase, right? Like whether they don't have kids or their kids are old or out of the house. Like I think that like our one generation above me like have friends and then they go home, but my generation really lives in communities. So what does that mean and what does that look like, right? But that's no different than things that have already been happening in like ancient tribes, for example, right? So how do we spend time together? How do we live together? How do we help each other so that we don't die alone? Like these are actually some of the questions that are top of mind for a lot of people that are kind of around my age. So if I think about my legacy, what I'm doing right now with eWebinar, hopefully it's going to give me the financial means to invest in that next thing. I don't know what it is now, but I would like it to be definitely the thing that gives me most joy, which is community related.
Which is interesting to hear from someone that travels 11 months of the year, but I like the way you describe the community base, because so many people think community is location based, but it's really not.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
No. So let's bring it back to the funding source of that legacy for just a second. So once upon a time ago, Marnie and I, when we were founders, and even before that, working in corporate America, we've literally done thousands of webinars. We'd love for you to share with us and our audience a little more detail around what eWebinar actually helps folks solve. What's the purpose? What does it do? And what's the secret sauce? Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, so we automate repetitive webinars. So mainly focus on training and onboarding. So you can imagine somebody signs up for your product, they need to get onboarded, they need to get trained on your product. Otherwise, they're not going to keep paying you that subscription. Right now, it's common that somebody might run that webinar live on Zoom like once a month. So what eWebinar does is that we turn any video into an interactive webinar that you can run on a recurring schedule. So you can do hundreds of webinars every single month without physically needing to be in front of a camera. So it's like the Netflix of webinars, but our software is such that it wraps around the video so that as you're watching, there's things that engage the attendee. So is it a quiz, a hotspot, a tip, a poll, right? So there's fun things to do while they're learning so that it engages them until the end. And then as the host, you're also, each one of those things is like a data point that you're collecting about your customer. We also have an asynchronous chat. So people can like ask you a question when they're there. If you happen to be there on the other side, when they ask a question, you can respond live, just like an intercom chat. But if you're not there, you can respond through email. So in that way, like they never miss an answer and you never miss a question. So it's truly like automating all the live webinars that you are doing over and over again that you wish you could be doing more, and really liberating people from their computers so they can spend more time on their life and not on their work. So I was the one that was running all those webinars in my past life. And this is a product that I wish existed.
I can get that. I have done many. I've definitely done. Well, I've got 6 demos today, 6 webinars today. And I think I might have been on one of yours this morning because I decided at 5:30 that I wanted to learn something. And it was an automated, like, did you want to sign up for the 6 a.m. session? Yeah, I did, and it for sure, it was an automated version of it where I got to ask questions, got questions answered, and I appreciated that I got it like truly when I needed it. So that's fantastic. We've mentioned you on LinkedIn and we have mentioned you on Substack. MelissaKwan.com is what I believe you said. But who makes a good eWebinar? Like, is there a size company that you're finding really drives, good business for them? Who should reach out to you, and what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to find me or send me a DM, the best is through LinkedIn. My last name is Kwan, Kwan. In my profile, there are many, many different ways to get to my, my podcast, my newsletter, other content that I generate. If you want to see how eWebinar can help you or your business, it's just ewebinar.com. So spelled exactly as it sounds. But as far as like size of companies, like I think the best companies that we serve are resource strap companies, which is why I create a lot of content for Bootstrap founders and Bootstrap entrepreneurs, because we help people do so much more with so little, right? And actually, like, I think a lot of people think, oh, like the bigger the company, the better the customer, but not for our price point, because we're not an enterprise product, right? We start off at $99. It doesn't matter if you're a $1 billion company or a one-person business. You start off at $99.
Yeah.
And actually, like small, medium-sized companies, not only are they resource strapped, like they make decisions very quickly.
Yep.
So that we can have an immediate impact. Whereas the larger the company, the more people have to approve, the more champions, the more red tape. So we actually don't really go after big companies, just because it's kind of a pain. But yeah, like if you have, if you're a SaaS company, if you require training, onboarding, things like that, demos, like if you wish that you could be cloning yourself and doing 100 webinars a month instead of one a month with like 2 people that join, just check us out.
That is awesome. As we go, we call this leadership rules. Is there a leadership rule that you feel like you definitely follow for your life?
I could say that I always lead by example. I never expect somebody to give me what I am not already giving them. And that goes for friendships, that goes for my relationships, and that goes for my company. So I don't expect you to be more dedicated than me. Like, how could I do that? And I have quit jobs in the past when I was with companies because my boss would say things to me like, well, why do I need to do that when I have you? Right. So I don't respect that. Right. I don't want to work for someone like that.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can set a really good example for your team, people will only be as good as you are, but not better. So that's something that's something that I just do every single day.
Awesome.
Love it. Melissa, we cannot thank you enough for your time. I know you're busy, so thank you so much. And I would say that we will continue to follow you. You're a great listen, or follow, I should say. And we'll make sure that everybody knows in the show notes how to do the same. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks so much.